Hello guys, and welcome to this new Python tutorial. Today we are going to talk about namespaces and scopes in Python. These are very important because they will give us a good understanding of how really functions and variables are worked or are mapped in Python. And of course, this also will help us later on to understand the concepts of the object-oriented programming in Python. So, a namespace is a mapping from names to objects implemented as dictionaries in Python, which means that unique name for each and every object. As you know, Python dictionaries have key value pairs. The keys are unique, so we cannot find two keys that have the same name in Python. Thus, namespaces in Python are used to map each word to the object or to the corresponding value. For example, for integer, if you give it x equals to 3, so we have the name x and we get the object from the memory location. Okay? Namespaces are created at different moments and have different lifetimes. As we will see later on, we have different types of namespaces. For example, when you define a function, you create a new namespace. When you open a new program, you have your new space. When you close your program, you close your namespace. When you execute a function, so you close your namespace, etc. A scope is the textual region of Python program where namespace is directly accessible. For example, if we define a function, we give it a name and we give it variables, we will have local variables. And this scope is where the namespace is directly accessible. So for example, inside the function, if you define your variable, you call the variable inside the function, you will get the result. But if we call it outside the function, it will say that it is not defined. Okay? The lifetime of a namespace depends upon the scope of objects. If the scope of an object ends, the lifetime of namespace also ends. As we have said, if you declare your function, you define your variables, then you execute the function, which means that you have ended your execution, the namespace will end because the scope has been executed or the code has been executed. We have four types of scopes and namespaces. We have the local, as we have said, inside the function we have the local variables. We have the enclosed, which means that it is defined inside the nested functions. It is not global and it is not local. It is between them. And we use the non-local keyword to define these words if we want to use them in our functions or in our programs. We have the global, which means that what we define in the main program, okay? Or we can use the global keyword to define the global scope. And we have the built-in. The built-in, which means that what we have inside the modules, for example, if you want to import a number such as pi, which is built in using the math module. To understand more about that, we will start by examples. So here we start from, for example, the built-in scope. Okay, so we have print, for example, hello world. Okay, since we have a built-in function, so this is a built-in scope, right? And we have said earlier, for example, from math import pi, okay, and write pi. So here we are also in the built-in scope, right? Because we use the built-in functions and the built-in variables, right? Now, if we want to define a global keyword, for example, x equals to, let's say, global variable, right? Right? So if you print x global variable, okay? So here we are in global scope, since we are in the main program, okay? So this is a global scope. For example, if we want to define a local and the enclosed scope, we use a nested function. We start from def outer, right? So here we define another function, def inner, right? And inside the second function, we define x equals to, for example, local, okay? Print x. And between the functions, so here we are in the main program, right? Main program. Here we are in the local because we are inside the function, and between the local and the global we have our enclosed. So here x is enclosed, right? And we are on our function in here, run. So here we have our inner or our local keyword, our local scope, since we are inside the function, okay? And between the functions we have the enclosed keyword, right? It will print local. So this is all for the scopes and namespaces in Python. I hope that you have learned new things. Thanks for watching and see you in the next one.